Good evening, everybody. The Music Fan is back, bringing smiles to the faces, knowledge to the people, and most importantly, music to the masses. Apologies for the pretty sporadic video release this week. As I've said before, this is moving week and it's really stressful. And on top of all of that, our internet went out this week, so I'm working even more short-handed. But I still promise that these videos will come out. You got the first two yesterday, which was an RUN and a 5-minute theory. I had to change up the order of releases just so I could get everything out in time. And you'll get this one today, and then one more RUN tomorrow. These next two videos are going to be loosely themed. Honestly, I have a lot of really interesting stuff that I want to review within the next few weeks, and there's some great albums that are being dropped very shortly that I'm really excited to talk about, and might have some special guests, who knows. But last week I didn't find anything in particular that I really wanted to review, so on a whim I looked at two of Anthony Fantano's most highly rated albums from this year, and not only that, two of the more disturbing ones that he has listened to so far. I want to give my opinions about those as well. Quick warning for everybody, these are going to be very hard albums to listen to. I'm going to just throw it out there from the get-go. So if you are someone who has been dealing with depression, someone who has been a little bit compromised mentally recently, this might not be the music to listen to. Even if I do give it a good or a bad rating, I would still recommend not listening to it if you don't feel like you're in the right mental state for it. So, anyways, without further ado, let's get going with the first RUN. That being Uboa and their latest album, The Origin of My Depression. Xandra Metcalfe is a drone, ambient, and noise music artist from Melbourne, Australia. Their previous album includes The Sky May Be in 2018. Yes, there. I am not exactly sure what pronouns they use, but yes, they are trans. They have transitioned, I believe, from man to woman. I do apologize if I'm a little bit off on that. I have tried to do as much research as I can, and I believe I have that right. I came across this after hearing Anthony Fantano's raving review about this particular album, saying that it was very dark, very intense, and I definitely wanted to check it out. Now, word of warning, I'm not someone who really listens to a lot of drone and ambient music. It's not that I'm opposed to it, it's just I don't usually find that type of music hugely interesting, especially when it just like goes on forever and there's not really much there. The last ambient album that I listened to was Tim Hecker's Anoyo, which was decent. It had some interesting ideas. It just didn't really go anywhere for me, and because of that, I usually tend to stay away from this type of music. However, with the raving review from Anthony Fantano, I jumped right in, and I will say that I'm happy that I did, but also this isn't a happy album. Just by reading the title, The Origin of My Depression, we are dealing with a very dark and very raw album. Most of the lyrics on here, from what I can tell, are dealing from the perspective of Xandra, dealing with changes in life, with transitioning. Both the pros and the cons of that, and the stigmas that other people associate with trans people. It feels like we're at a point where they have been bottling this for so long, and they finally let it out. It also seems to be dealing with a particular person in mind that this person was dating, or was just having companionship with, who left, whether it was due to their fault or maybe the other person's preconceived notions of what they wanted in this companionship just not working out, whether it's due to just different viewpoints or maybe something even darker like just transphobia in general. There's a lot of raw emotions here, and you can definitely feel it on this album. And there's a lot of really interesting lyrical ideas. The last song on the album is one of the more interesting lyrical ideas about Xandra coming to grips with who they are as a trans person, and only wishing that they had the strength and courage to be that person when they were younger, so they could have felt more comfortable in their body. Another song that had very interesting lyrics is An Angel of Great and Terrible Light. These lyrics seem to be talking about the imperfections of life and changing those imperfections, whether it's something as simplistic as going to exercise to feel better about your weight and your body, or something a little bit deeper and more poignant to their situation, which is not feeling comfortable in one's body and changing that body to represent more of what the inside is. I find a lot of the lyrics to be very interesting, even if I can never share the perspective of what this person has been through. I find at least the emotions related. And those are copied into the music in a very interesting way. What is cool about this album is it feels like a full entire experience. This is 7 songs in about, I want to say 35-40 minutes, but at the same time, it feels like it all flows in on itself pretty well. That's why I'm not going to be necessarily going with best songs or worst songs. This is an experience that you need to listen to. Starting with Detransitioning, you're getting a song that opens pretty sparse and pretty eerily. You have mostly just Xandra singing, and then a little bit of just very staccato piano melodies. It feels really eerie, it feels a little bit almost atonal, but eventually transitions into mostly overlaying vocals with a little bit more atmosphere, but also dissonant, a little bit of tension. It's opening up a little bit, it's more atmospheric, and you're adding more parts, but you still feel something's wrong. At the end, you get a little bit of glitching and electronic enhancement of the song right up until the end, and you know that we're going to go on a very interesting and very dark journey, or something that's going to be a little bit off all the time. Next, we get into the origin of my depression, which starts, again, very eerily. You hear something that, to me, kind of sounds like someone potentially hanging themselves, and then it continues with this really uneasy atmosphere. There's a lot of quiet vocals, there's a lot of atmospheric electronics, there's very rattling percussion, like chains and beats, as well as these more melodic pieces like bells and chimes. It makes it for an interestingly layered song, yet still a very unsettling vibe. The lyrics themselves only come in at the second minute, and then it eventually builds to this part which starts around 4 minutes, where Xandra starts screaming, showing her pain in the situation that's going on. Unlike a lot of ambient and drone music, this hooks me in because of the unsettling nature. It's because I want to hear what's going to happen next. Even though I'm not exactly enjoying what's going on, I still want to know what the heck is going to go on. And it grasps me in such a way with these layering of very distinct yet interesting parts. We then go into Lay Down and Rot, which also builds very well, but this time in more of an industrial sense. Instead of using more melodic or choral instruments, this song works on using unorthodox percussion, again using the change, using beats, using a lot of more interesting percussion ideas that you don't usually hear in a lot of other pieces. It keeps that unease going on, and then eventually the screaming comes in at 2.5 minutes, building to a crescendo with some static and some glitches. So again, it feels like everything is flowing into one another. Eventually we get to the next song, Appalachian Joy, which goes back to a more melodic piece. This one brings in those marimbas and bells and chimes again. And it also sounds like there's this stringed instrument. I don't know if it's harp or sitar or something else, but it adds some beautiful layering. And there's even some very nice, hushed singing. It eventually opens up again like all these other arrangements, but then it gets weird. About 2.5 minutes, you start hearing some static before the piece abruptly ends at 3 minutes. But then eventually that electronic and static parts comes back in, and more industrial noises come in, building to a crescendo into the next song, which is the heaviest song on the album by far. It's only 2 minutes long, not even 2 minutes, but it leaves such a mark. Please Don't Leave is so intense. It starts literally with Xandra screaming, and there's also what sounds like a gun cocking and pulling the trigger. There's intense drums, there's glitching, there's really haunting vocals, and then the song mellows out for just a minute to have some bells and marimbas going, but then it goes right back into a very haunting part. This time feeling a little bit more industrial metal. It sounds like there's either guitar or some very low electronic melodies, and it just is so intense. The first time I heard it, it caught me hugely off guard. This is not for the faint of heart. There's just so much pain and so much anguish on this album. If you remember from last year, one of the more interesting and one of the more intense albums I listened to was Daughters, You Won't Get What You Want. This is a different type of intense. Daughters was really hard to listen to, but at the same time, there was a little bit of a more theatrical nature to there. It was so scary and so unnerving that it almost felt a little bit over the top. It felt like at parts you were going insane, but in that insaneness, there is a sense of zany, there's a sense of weirdness, and because of that, it felt unnerving. It felt wrong, but it almost felt imaginary at points, or like a fever dream. But this feels raw, this feels real, and I think it's because of the calmness, the stillness of everything, as well as things being a little bit off. You get points where it like shit hits the fan and you can tell that something is off, but it's never ever too over the top. It feels real. It feels like something that you would go through, and a lot of people go through. This is what I feel like many people with depression, many people with anxiety deal with on a pretty regular basis. I think that's why it hits so harder for me, because I can understand where that uneasiness starts to come in, and then everything feels like it's falling apart. I give props to the CD for that. The last two songs are the longest on the album: An Angel of Great and Terrible Light and Misspent Youth. An Angel of Great and Terrible Light, I think, clocks in about 8 minutes. This one is interesting. This one builds really well, and I really enjoy the more melodic parts on here. I love how it builds at the beginning. Whatever the string instrument is at the beginning, beautiful chords, just beautiful extensions, great voice leading, making for a really nice point of calmness and stillness for a minute. And then eventually it layers on. You get this marimba melody, which is simplistic but really nice. And the other really cool thing about this song is that the main idea is 7 measures long. So it feels like calmness, but because of that irregularity in the timing, you also feel like something's off. It's like really meditative in a lot of the parts. It eventually brings back the glitches and unnerving ideas, and it does eventually like build up to a more industrial sound with a little bit of bass boosting, and there is screaming, but it makes for a really enjoyable ride as it goes along. It's one of the songs I didn't think I was going to enjoy, but as I look back, I really enjoy the melody that is there. If there is one problem with this album, it is Misspent Youth. This whole entire time has felt like a ride, and I understand that Misspent Youth is kind of just looking back at everything, taking everything in with a grain of salt, and kind of like coming down from this depressive state. But at almost 11 minutes, it doesn't do enough to keep your attention the whole entire time. And that's where I think being an ambient and drone album, for me, this is where it loses me. It's nice that it's at least the last song, and there are some interesting parts. I do enjoy the minimalist nature of this song, featuring mostly piano and chimes. It is hugely atmospheric. There's some interesting melodies, and it does get a little bit atonal at times, very experimental, but it's, to me, just a little bit too long. If you made it like 6 minutes long, if you cut out a little bit of the time, I think it would have worked a little bit better and would have stuck the landing that this album needed. That being said, it's hard to take negatives with this album because it's such an emotional ride that you need to prepare yourself for it. Like Anthony Fantano mentioned, this album is not for the faint of heart. This is not for someone who has been in a depressive state. If you've dealt with this stuff before and hearing stuff like this isn't cathartic to you, this isn't worth your time. This is not going to be helpful for you. But I think this is an album that is worth listening to if you feel like you have the right mindset for it. Yes, you're going to feel drained after this album. You're not going to be in the greatest of moods. And there was actually a point in time where I was thinking, is this meritable in the music field? And when I heard about this idea and hearing that it's really not best for everybody, as well as like hearing songs with screaming, with more industrial ideas where it was not very melodic but more intense, it kind of brought up the idea of torture porn when it comes to scary movies, where it's not scary, but it's just so grotesque that doesn't really have any cinematic merit. And this is a conversation that has been going on for years, and there isn't quite a right or wrong answer. Same thing with this. I think there is more merit to it because of some of the more interesting melodic arrangements like Ablation Joy, Detransitioning, and An Angel of Great and Terrible Light. But I can also understand if people listen to it and be like, what the heck is going on? This doesn't deserve a listen. Why did someone make something like this? But this, to me, is worth a listen. Merited that you have the mental fortitude to be able to go into this knowing that this is going to be a very intense and very hard album to listen to. So that's why I say this album deserves a full listen. This is not something I'm going to be putting on repeat, but I do find a lot of it interesting, and a lot of it just so resonant and just like hits you in the feels. Check it out if you feel like you're up to the challenge. That is my time. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you like or hate this album and your reasons why. Let me know of other albums in 2019 you would like me to review. Share this with your friends, and most importantly, subscribe to my channel so I know that you enjoy what I'm doing and want to see this channel become bigger and better for the future. So tomorrow, I'm going to be back with the last Are You In this room. Until then, this is Music Fan, and I'm signing off.